At 14 millimeters wide with 82 millimeter filter threads under 500 grams, the Nikon 14 to 30 f4 lens on paper seems to be the perfect travel lens. But there's one question that kept me from buying this since getting into the Nikon Z mount. Is f4 enough? Especially with advanced stabilization of my Nikon Z6 III, can you actually get away with that slower aperture in the dark? I decided to find out. I bought this lens at the legendary camera store Map Camera in Shinjuku, Tokyo. In this video, I bet my entire trip going from Tokyo to Chongqing, China to see whether or not portability beats aperture. The build quality of the 14 to 30 f4S has S-Line written all over it with its rear and front gaskets fully weather sealing this lens, and most importantly, what ties all of this together, that flat front element. Now, being someone who owns a 14 to 24 2.8 f lens, finally I don't have to use improvised solutions to put filters on the front. Looking at the lens design of this, it actually is a bit unique in a sense because you have your 30 millimeter range all the way to the 14 millimeter range, and then when you want to collapse it for travel, it actually collapses a little bit further beyond that 14 millimeter range. And this is really great and useful for travel, especially being at that 482 gram weight. Really can't be beat in that ultra wide category. Going back to my original question, bringing this over into Chongqing shooting at nighttime, I felt I wasn't limited at all using my Nikon Z6 III, shooting this at night as low as a fourth of a second handheld with the stabilization in camera. What has really changed over the years? 3200 ISO, 6400 ISO, even 12,800 ISO with the use of AI denoise really isn't a limitation like it used to be when shooting video and photo. Not to mention the dual ISO within cameras like this Nikon Z6 III, allowing practically noise-free footage at 6400 ISO. Now, looking at the corner performance on this lens, it actually is really sharp. And I bought this based on comparisons from the 14 to 24 2.8 lens and this, and most people didn't see any noticeable difference when comparing the ranges between f4 all the way up to the much slower apertures. And that is really incredible. You're able to get that sort of performance from that S14 to 24 lens in something so small. Obviously, if you bring this lens up to, say, 5.6 f8, you're gonna get a much sharper image in the corners compared to f4, but I think still, even at f4, this still performs really well. Looking at now the autofocus backgrounds when shot at f4, it really renders the backgrounds quite nicely, and you can see right here that you definitely do get pretty nice blur at f4, and also has nice rounded bokeh balls with minimal onion ring. Now again, look at the nice sharpness, center of frame. Then looking at the background blur, it is nice and smooth with minimal outlining on the image. Now here is another shot at f8, and you can still achieve really great background blur at f8. Now this lens has a minimum focus distance of 11 inches, which is 28 centimeters. Overall, it has pretty good close focusing capabilities, and it's really nice that you're able to achieve this throughout the entire range. Okay, let's go on to the next photo here. Overall, a pretty impressive performance from this lens. Southeast Asia, right? land of fogging and fungus. If you've ever been to Southeast Asia, you'll know how easy it is to fog up your lenses. And I feel like the fluorine and nanocrystal coating on this actually did a really good job at preventing the same sort of fog buildup that I normally get with my lenses. Not only does this do a really good job at wicking away water and also preventing dust buildup, I found that the flare resistance on this was one of the best I've ever used, and is very similar actually to my 24-120 lens. You can easily shoot this directly into the sun. Here's some examples now of me doing so. Now, I'm a bit of a sucker for starbursts in my lens, and this lens actually performs really, really well for that and provides really nice pointed Sunstars, one of the best I've ever seen in a camera lens. Ultimately, one of the best use cases for this is landscape or architecture work. If you're in the world of real estate or architecture work, you'll know that this is one of the top lenses and has been for quite some time since its release. Here's some examples now using this for real estate work, and I think this is where this lens really shines. Because of the really great distortion correction on this lens, that means it also works quite well for environmental portraiture. Whether you're wanting to elongate something like someone's legs and create a really interesting sort of effect that way, or you're wanting to do more closer up shots at, say, that 30mm range, this actually works really well for portraits. One of the obvious downsides though when shooting that portrait work is it is quite clinical and sharp, so you will really benefit from using a softening filter of some sort, whether it be like a black mist or something like that. It could potentially remove some of that ugly over sharpened look. The lens recording me right now is a 24-120 f4 lens. And this lens has sort of stole the show when it comes to the videos that you see on this YouTube channel. Whether I'm doing product photography or talking headshots out in the wild, it's usually using this lens. Looking at the 24-120 f4 and this 14-30 lens, this really pairs quite well together and provides maybe a tiny little bit of overlap, but overall, this is an ideal setup at covering basically any range you might possibly need. Let's look at some comparisons now with the Color Checker Passport 2 chart, and let's see if there is much variation between the two lenses. Now looking at the colors right off the bat, they look pretty similar to one another, but one thing I just can't get over is how sharp the 24-120 looks for being an extended zoom lens. Now looking at both those lenses, comparing them against one another, do you think you can just swap in between both lenses easily without people noticing? What if I were to tell you that I'm actually shooting on the 14-30 right now? Proof here is me having this 24-120 f4 lens in my hands now. Now I'm far too broke to afford two of these, so trust me when I say this, that this 14-30 is recording me now, and I'm sure you probably couldn't really notice much of a difference between these two lenses. And I think that really is the benefit of shooting with these Nikon zooms within the S range. If I were to swap to, say, the 14-24 2.8 lens, likely it would look almost identical as these two lenses look as shown here. Now, while this looks a little sterile, this does present a lot of positives, especially when using something like a 24.5 megapixel camera like this Nikon Z6 III. You really do have the ability to punch in a lot more than you would otherwise have the ability to do with a lot of older lenses or lenses that aren't built with the same level of quality. In my opinion, lens quality and design make up a lot more for overall sharpness than megapixels within a camera. If you're someone like myself and you own something like a Z6 III at only 24.5 megapixels, you can sleep quite calmly knowing that you can still punch in a good amount even without something like a Z7 or a Z7 II camera with more megapixels. Now, I don't have it with me right now, but I have also done some brief comparisons with this 14-30 and my 26 2.8 prime lens from Nikon. And actually, this outperformed that lens in overall sharpness. So that just goes to show you just how sharp this lens is. And then moving on to video, the smooth autofocus transitions when using this really make for a great video lens. After spending the longest time trying to decide whether or not f4 would be enough for me, safe to say after dragging it through the streets of Tokyo, Philippines, Thailand, and China, this one lived up to its name as being one of the best ultra-wides on the Nikon platform. As camera bodies have really improved over the last while, the f4 is no longer a compromise and more so a strategy in my eyes. Now, let me know what you guys think. Is it worth it to give up portability for that extra stop of light, or is this one the one to buy? I have links down in the description if you want to buy through my product links. I would greatly appreciate that. I will see you all in the next one. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye.